Have a little accent. I'll be right back.
That's great.
You might need doggy daycare.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so we've gotten 2 emails so far about Utopia, and it seems like people like it. So
Yeah, 100% in favor so far.
so far, so good.
Although there
Guys.
was one comment on the Standard article that was against it. Now, I don't know where the person was from, but Tyler Glee from the city, one of our residents, responded that he was in favor. So we have 3 in favor. And this one person who said it's not the government's responsibility to provide that kind of thing. And Tyler's response was, well, it's a utility like water or electricity or, you know. So
Well,
it'll be
one would
interesting.
argue it's an essential utility at this point, the way we're having to connect like this. It's
Right.
like telephone anymore.
I got a call today that said you need to talk to Centerville about Utopia.
Okay.
Yes, my brother lives in Centerville. In fact, I even talked about this during
Yeah.
the
Is
meeting.
that
Yeah.
a good thing or
They were
bad
not
thing?
about it, but I think he likes it now. But it wasn't a happy thing when it went in. But I think that was one of their first ones that they ever did.
Yeah.
Wow.
I wonder if we'll get the mayor back.
He's being drugged down the street by a leash and that little dog.
I have terrible lighting for Zoom calls. I'm using my daughter's lampy pet. Like, I don't know if you can see that. Got that
At least
from
it's
Mark.
not one of those light lamps.
I have a little ring light that my daughter got me, but it doesn't fit over the thing, and then it just reflects on my glasses.
Hey, Ryan, how do you feel about item number 4?
I got mixed feelings.
Do you know this family?
That's why I've got mixed feelings.
Ah, okay. Well, when we get to that one, don't hold back, okay?
All right. I'll make sure to lay it all out.
Okay.
Tell us how you really feel.
Okay. Sorry about that.
We were talking about maybe splurging for some doggy daycare for you, Mayor.
I've tried to get contact with a puppy school, but they won't call me back. So if anybody knows anything, I'm open. I just took him out before the meeting started. And
There's nothing like peeing on a carpet, Mayor.
well, yeah, fortunately, we have hardwood floors where he does that, but my office has carpet, and he was getting ready for number 2.
Ah, even better.
All right, well, enough of that. Looks like we have a quorum. Before we start, I would like to excuse Councilman Severing. He's ill this evening and is asked to be excused. I assume Council Member Stoker, unless I have missed her, she'll be joining us later.
She's having a little bit of technical difficulties I'm helping her with.
Okay. Do you want to wait or shall we go ahead and get started, John?
I think we can go ahead and I'll get her on here in just a second.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to City Council meeting tonight. Council members, thank you for taking time to join us and serve the city. And for any of the public that has joined us, we welcome you and want you to know you're always welcome and we value your input. For those of you who may have comments tonight during our public comments portion of our agenda. If you would just remember to state your name and address, we'd be appreciative. So with that, Councilmember Ekstrom, I believe tonight you have either the thought, an invocation, or invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. So take us away.
All right, I'll be an invocation tonight. Our dear Heavenly Father, we are so very grateful to be gathered together. We are grateful for this beautiful community in this city that we serve. We are grateful for the opportunity that we have to associate with one another and to be able to have thy spirit to guide us as we make decisions regarding our city. We ask thee to please bless us with an outpouring of thy spirit. Please bless our residents. Please especially bless those who are in need and who are struggling right now. And please help us to have the insight and inspiration to know how best to serve and help them. We are so very grateful for our freedoms, for all of the material possessions that we enjoy in this area, and for the extreme beauty that surrounds us. We're grateful for one another, for the camaraderie that we enjoy with one another, and ask thee to please bless us to always uplift and encourage one another. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilmember Ekstrom. We'll now go to the Pledge of Allegiance.
John, do you have the flag?
See if John puts that up. There we go.
Oh, very good. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Ekstrom. We greatly appreciate that. We'll move on to our agenda then. We'll start with item number 1, which is our consent agenda, and be looking for discussion or a motion to approve the council minutes of the November 10th, 2020 City Council meeting. Do you have any amendments? If not, I'd seek a motion.
Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Councilman Swanson. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilmember Ekstrom. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. We'll now go into the active part of our agenda, and we'll seek public comments this evening. John, if you would monitor that, let us know if anyone has a comment. To see anyone, John?
Not yet. Yep, pretty quiet on the home front tonight.
All right. We'll move on then to item number 3 on our agenda, which is the presentation of the quarterly financial report. We'll have our Finance Director, Evan Nelson, make that report. So Evan.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to promote Evan to a panelist.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Evan.
All right, good evening, everyone. Tonight we're reviewing the quarterly financial report for the quarter ending September 30th, 2020. That report was included in your packet. We have a staff report with that, a summary sheet that has some graphs on it that show a summary of the data. And then there's a detailed report showing the revenues and expenditures throughout all the city accounts. So we'll just talk a little bit higher level and then answer questions that you might have. Just to let you know, we did, under the mayor's direction, establish an audit committee, and a couple of you are on that committee, of course. And we had our first meeting of the audit committee yesterday, where we presented this quarterly report to them and reviewed some of the information with that group. And that was a good experience. I think we have a good committee, an experienced committee put together. And I think the city will benefit from their involvement in reviewing our financial reports, including the audit report that will be coming out pretty soon. First, we'll talk about sales tax. John, if you could pull up that sales tax graph at the top of one of those pages, I think the third page. Yeah, there we are. So this graph shows the sales tax trend for the first 3 months of the fiscal year. That's the red line. You can see that the green line, which is the lowest one, that's the budget for fiscal year 21. We set that budget at the beginning of the COVID season, and with a lot of uncertainty and concern about the impact of coronavirus on our revenues. As things have gone along, we actually have ended up having not only revenues stronger than what we had budgeted, but revenues much stronger than the previous fiscal year as well. And we think there are some good reasons for that, but we haven't really seen a softening of that trend yet. We're still kind of monitoring to see what things look like as time goes by. Of course, we have a 2-month lag in those revenues, so those numbers don't really give us much look into the future, but they're important numbers because it's such a significant part of our general fund revenue. So anyway, it's a positive trend. We're really happy with what we're seeing as far as the general fund revenues and sales tax, but we still have some uncertainty about how that trend will go in the future. Any questions on sales tax?
We'll take it, even though it's very surprising.
Yeah. Okay, John, if you could scroll down just a bit, we'll look at those other two graphs. So I just made a few notes in the staff report as I looked at the numbers throughout the funds of the city. In the general fund, we see that expenditures are slightly greater than revenues. Part of this is due to costs, annual costs that we incur early in the fiscal year. The big one is our insurance premium, our annual insurance premium. So that happens at the beginning of the fiscal year, and it's a pretty large expenditure. And then we also have the CARES expenditures in the general fund for coronavirus. And I didn't mention before, but the council did approve amendments to the current year budget, and those amendments don't show up in this report because they didn't happen until November. So we'll see those amendments included in the numbers as part of the quarterly report for December 31st. In the transportation impact fee fund, that has the tall red bar there, that shows 100% expended. 100% of the budget is expended in that fund. The transportation impact fee fund is essentially a very small fund that we kind of maintain a balance there, and then we transfer the money out of that fund into the capital improvement fund to be spent on road projects. So in this case, we had budgeted a certain dollar amount to be transferred out, and we've transferred that full budgeted dollar amount into the capital improvement fund to cover expenditures related to the intersection widening that's underway, or that's at least in the planning stages. So that's the explanation on that one. The capital improvement fund, we show expenditures exceeding revenues. At the end of this quarter, we still had some grant expenditures that hadn't been reimbursed yet. So that's one of the reasons for that. And then a big reason is also the Wells Fargo building. We had budgeted to purchase the Wells Fargo building in the previous fiscal year. And it didn't end up happening that quickly, but it landed in July. So we went ahead with that transaction, but we still need to amend the budget to roll the money forward into the current year for that expenditure. In the sewer fund, expenditures exceed revenues due to the sewer relining project. We had that relining project toward the beginning of the fiscal year, and that was a pretty major expense. A lot of that was to be covered by fund balance as well. So in the stormwater fund, expenditures exceed revenues just slightly. We budgeted things a little bit differently in the stormwater fund this year than we had previously, where we have a large amount of grant funding budgeted as a revenue source. And then we have the expenditure of that money budgeted as an expenditure. But then we also have an offsetting budget amount that we use to move that expenditure to the balance sheet. It's kind of an accounting procedure that we do at the end of the year. So when I looked at the numbers and adjusted for that, where our expenditures are only about $3,700 ahead of revenues. So I think we're doing okay there. The solid waste fund, we had a large amount of expense on the garbage truck leases at the beginning of the year. So that was kind of a major expenditure. We did those major amendments in the solid waste fund in November. And so that'll be corrected in the next report that we present for December. And then in the motor pool funds, let's see. Expenditures exceed revenues, and it's approximately the amount of the depreciation expense. We show depreciation expense in those two funds, but we don't necessarily utilize those funds to accumulate a fund balance. And so those expenditures appear without necessarily having an offsetting revenue. With the motor pool funds, we include in the budget each year the amount that the city wants to put toward the purchase of new vehicles and new equipment, but we haven't necessarily tried to generate a running balance in those funds. So that's been our approach. Are there any questions about any of these funds or anything else in the report that you're wondering about?
I guess, Evan, I would just ask, if I'm a citizen looking at this and seeing all the expenditures exceeding revenues, I would want to ask our finance director that we have assurances that those are going to catch up by the end of the year, that we're not going to be spending in a deficit.
Okay. I think we've kind of gone through some of the details explaining why some of those are ahead, and our practice is to monitor these throughout the year. It's pretty common to be ahead in some categories, just as far as the timing of things. But by the end of the fiscal year, we are generally pretty good at keeping things in line. Occasionally we have budget amendments that we propose once or twice or three, 2 or 3 times usually throughout the fiscal year. We'll propose some amendments to the budget for things that were not anticipated in the original report. But our departments I feel like do a very good job of watching their budgets and tracking things so that by the end of the fiscal year, our expenditures align with what has been approved by the city council.
And that's what I was looking for, because you did go into the detail, but that doesn't mean that we'll be caught up end of the year. And it's just a timing difference, as we like to say in the accounting profession.
Right.
Okay, anything else, Evan?
Well, that's all I have.
All right, Councilman Swanson, you ran a good meeting yesterday. I thought we had a good meeting. Anything you'd like to add?
Just to your comment, Mayor, about catching up by the end of the year, that we're not spending in deficit beyond what's been budgeted. What we see on the graph here is pretty common every year that I've been on the council. At this point in the fiscal year, the graph seems to always look this way. And by the end, we can go back historically and look, and virtually every department is under budget or right at budget by the end of the year. So if we didn't have that historical perspective, I would be a little concerned about this. But because of the history that we have and the good job that they've done in the past, I'm not at all worried about it.
Yeah, and I think that's the case. We will probably have one thing that's a little bit unusual this year that probably won't catch up, and that's the solid waste fund because of the activity there. But and then the big one, the transportation impact, that's simply a transfer into another fund. It's not money that went outside the city. So I know for accounting purposes, we have to show as an expenditure, but it's really a fund transfer. So, okay, thank you, Evan. Appreciate your work on that. Appreciate you putting that together.
You're welcome.
Muchly appreciated. So thank you. Any questions, council, or anything that you have to add? All right, Council Member Barker.
I just had, and this is my firefighter layman position, looking at our sales tax revenue already. I am going to project that by the end of December, we will be higher than what we've previously budgeted for the entire year. If we're already at 920,000 and we only budgeted 2.3 million, if that chart kind of holds, by the end of December, we'll be well over what we budgeted for the entire year. And I think it's time we start looking at some of the things we held back on, whether that's raises, employee benefits, or other projects in the city, because then we'll have, that's just my guess. December is always a bit steep month, and we'll be well over what we're projecting for the year.
I think we'll be ahead. I'd be, you could be right, but to be over the 2.3 million might be a little bit difficult. Just once again, to assure the council members, we do have a kind of a reinstatement schedule prioritized to reinstate, but I do want to make it clear, it's not the intention, unless the council decides to do that, to reinstate everything that was taken out, because some of those things may or may not be necessary as we go forward. But we do, that was the schedule in the January meeting. We'll come back and start talking about the things that need to be reinstated. And John has worked and shared with me, and we've discussed a spreadsheet that shows what we can maybe anticipate for those who, didn't get raises in the July timeframe. So I think we're on board with that, Councilman Barker, but just want to make sure, unless the council feels differently, it's probably not going to be a blanket reinstatement of everything that was taken out.
Well, in 3 months, when we're looking at this again, remember I made this prediction.
We'll do it. What do we, so this is through September, so 3 months, what are we collecting in sales tax a month? Evan, about 200 and, what are we collecting?
It looks like around 290 for the first 2 months, and then the third month was 340 or so.
We'll say 325. So in 3 months, we'll have another, say, million. That'd put us at 1.9 million. So I might take you up on dinner on that, Councilman Barker. I might take you up, but you know, I've lost bets before. All right, but just to let you know, we do have a schedule that was put on very early when we were taking things out of the budget. And just a reminder, we still have to a little bit restore the rainy day fund, the deficit we took out of the general fund, at 366. We haven't restored all of that yet. And I believe it's prudent to restore the fund balance or rainy day fund so that we're not operating in a deficit, because that doesn't work long term. So, but I do think we'll have that restored here probably by the end of October, November. So, but that's the first priority, is to restore the funds there. And then remember, we did take another 200,000 out of the road funds. So we've got a restoration of about 500,000 before we start restoring operating expenses too. So, but we'll see. We'll follow that along, Councilman Barker. I wrote it down. All right, let's go on to item number 4. And I meant to do this at the start of the meeting, and if we could put this on as an agenda item going forward. At the beginning of the meeting, if anyone has a conflict or perceived conflict of interest on any items on the agenda, we want to give them an opportunity to state that. So I'll ask that question. Councilman Barker, you have a potential conflict on the agenda this evening?
As I mentioned earlier to you today, I've had a good track record of recusing myself lately. So I'm going to keep it going, and I don't think I should vote on item number 4.
All right. Thank you for that disclosure. So item number 4 is a discussion and an action to consider an ordinance annexing 0.674 acres located at 2463 North Fruitland Drive. That happens to be the property that Councilmember Barker owns and lives in, and has filed an annexation application. So we will hear from our city recorder, Annette Spenlove. And before we do that, Annette, do you want to just give an oversight before we go into a public hearing?
Yes. As Mayor mentioned, it's Ryan Barker's property that he's annexing, and the City Council accepted his petition back on October 27th. And as required by Utah State Code, the Weber County Surveyor has reviewed the annexation plat map and asked for some changes to be made. Those were done by Great Basin Engineering, and the county surveyor found the corrections to be correct, and that was done on October 15th. The property that's being proposed for annexation is the petitioners requesting a RE20 zone, which the Planning Commission has reviewed and recommend the RE20 zone. The city is also required by Utah State Code to give notice of an annexation for 3 consecutive weeks in the local newspaper. And then there is a time frame for protests to be made on this annexation, and the date that those had to be turned in were December 7th, and we have received none. This annexation is in our annexation declaration policy, in the area of it, and before the City Council's an ordinance for your consideration, and tonight is also the public hearing.
Okay, anything else, Annette?
That's it.
Okay, at this point in time, I would like to open a public hearing regarding the annexation of the property at 2463 North Fruitland Drive. John, if you would let us know if we have any comments.
Okay, we've got the chat open. No hands or chat yet.
Okay, we'll just give a few minutes to make sure the public has ample opportunity to comment. Nothing, John?
Yep, still nothing, Mayor.
Okay, we'll move forward then. I would look for a motion then to close our public hearing. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Councilmember Swanson. Do we have a second to close the public hearing?
I'll
Second.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, we have a second by Councilwoman Stoker. Any discussion? All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any further discussion? If not, I would be looking for a motion to adopt ordinance number 2020-25 to approve the annexation of that property. Do we have a motion?
Mayor, I move that we adopt ordinance 2020-25 to approve the annexation of Ryan Barker's property.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Stoker. Do we have any further discussion? Being none, we'll go to a roll call vote. Councilmember Stoker,
Yes.
Councilmember Swanson,
Yes.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Yes.
Abstaining is Councilmember Barker, and absent tonight is Councilmember Severing. Motion passes. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 5 on our agenda this evening, which is a discussion or action to consider an agreement with Granite Construction for the 400-450 East widening Phase 1 project. John Call will make that presentation. He's our manager and city attorney. John, do you want to give us an overview of that?
Sure. So, council, we've got a contract here in front of us. Normally, this is the type of contract that would not have to come to the council because you would have already approved it in the budget. In this case, it's anticipated that this construction project will span 2 fiscal years. The one that you already have approved the budget for, which would include some of these costs, and the one yet to come. And so the only group that can bind the city for the amount of money in the future is the council. And so we brought this to the council for a review so that the contractor, which is Granite Construction, will have some confidence that the checks will not bounce come July 1st of 2021. The project is anticipated to start as early as March with some of the underground work. And then they have a finish date. I believe October 1st is their finish date. This graph here is a breakdown of the 3 companies that put in proposals. How they broke apart their tabulation is what it's called of their estimates for the costs. And then the last page gives the total. The winning or the low bidder is Granite Construction. Their projected cost or their cost that they are committing to under this agreement is just over $3.2 million, which is 125 less than Staker and over 400 less than Geneva. You may ask what this number here is in the engineer's estimate column. That's the conservative estimate from the engineers on what we should expect to pay for this type of work. If you are really interested, you can go through and see where the engineer's estimates were correct on the unit price and where there might have been some differences. But ultimately, the whole project has come in roughly $900,000 under the engineer's original estimate. The good news about that is that the council or that the city has received a grant from the WFRC through UDOT, which allows up to $3.6 million to be spent of federal and state grant monies towards this project. There is a match requirement from the city, and so we won't be able to get away without paying a dime towards the project, but it has substantially been reduced. Originally, if the engineer's estimate would have been more the number that we expected or that we got, the city would have roughly put in about $600,000 worth of money to construct the project. And at this point, we actually anticipate our estimate will be closer to the $200,000 range. So there's a savings to our residents by the way this is all played out. Part of the reason we think the project came in under bid is because the UDOT project, which is the intersection project, will actually be incorporated or performed by the same contractor. So some of the costs they don't have to pay twice. For example, if they bring a large traco or a steamroller out to roll the asphalt, they only have to do it once instead of twice. So there are some cost savings there. Also, just being able to be part of on the site and do all the work has some economies of scale as well. So we think that ultimately the agreement that the council made a few years ago to move forward with UDOT and all of that back end work has resulted in some significant savings for the city and for UDOT as well. Just one final thing, to be clear, the project that's being covered under this specific agreement is the area from 2650 North, which is at the north end of the Bicentennial Park area. So about that where Pleasant View Drive connects into Washington Boulevard, and then north to above Alberta a couple hundred feet. That's the scope of this project, and that's what the council is agreeing to, or it's being proposed that you agree to with this agreement. If the council's agreeable, then what we'd be looking for is a motion to approve this agreement and to authorize the mayor to sign on behalf of the city.
Okay, thank you, John. Are there any questions from the council before we seek a motion? And just as a reminder, I think incorporated in this the project that UDOT's doing, not this one, is they did take on the responsibility to widen 2600 up to the city offices. This is the 450 widening, but just as a reminder, that obligation was transferred from the city to UDOT, and we paid them a fixed fee in conjunction with their widening of the intersection. So, okay, any questions for John? If not, I would be seeking a motion to approve agreement number A44-2020 in regards to the contract with Granite Construction for the 450 East widening phase 1 project. Do we have a motion?
Mayor, I move that we enter into an agreement number A24-2020 with Granite Construction and authorize you, Mayor Berube, to sign on behalf of the city authorizing these funds.
Okay, did you say A44, Councilmember Ekstrom?
A24, at least that's what I thought I heard.
I think I have A44. Is that correct, Annette?
Yes, that's correct. 44.
Okay, I will amend my motion to say A44 instead of A24.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Swanson. We have a motion and a second to approve the agreement with Granite Construction. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor of approving the agreement, say aye.
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 Are there any opposing the signing of the agreement? Thank you very much.
Mayor, does this need to be roll call?
According to Annette, she told me it's voice, but
Great. No, she would know.
we can double check that. Annette?
It's a liability. Yes, it needs to be a roll call. Sorry, Mayor. That was my mistake.
Okay, then thank you, Council Member Swanson. Council Member Barker,
Yes.
Council Member Ekstrom,
Yes.
Council Member Swanson,
Yes.
Council Member Stoker.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Passes unanimously. We'll move on now to item number 6, which is a discussion or action to consider an ordinance rezoning property at approximately 875 East, 3300 North. I think that's in Councilmember Swanson's backyard almost. From residential R110 to Civic C zone. This is the new zone that the council approved. So Rob Scott, our planning director, will give us an overview of this agenda item.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, and audience, those attending tonight's meeting. This is the first opportunity for us to apply the zone to our zoning map. And as such, I wanted to pay particular attention, if you'll indulge me just for a second. We actually were fortunate enough to have an intern from the University of Utah's planning program, Julian Berg, as an intern who has put together site plans for, I'm not sure he's got them all done, but he's in the process of completing site plans for every one of our parks. And eventually we'll have them for all of our civic facilities, which will allow us to not only approve the and make the adjustments to our zoning map to apply the civic zone on our map, but it also allows us to be able to have an approved site plan so that residents can count on what is going to be taking place on our public properties. So I think you're all aware of the civic zone and the merits with respect to that. We had a number of phone calls, planning staff and others, with respect to the significance of the civic zone. Once it was explained to the residents and what have you, we did not receive anyone that was in opposition to making those changes. So let me just give you a brief overview with respect to this. Again, this is the Mountain View Park property, and it's currently zoned R110. The city is the applicant in this case. The Planning Commission at their meeting not only considered a recommendation to the council regarding this rezone that's before you tonight, but they also approved the site plan that's before you, subject to the rezone being approved. I think we've had a good discussion or description of where the property is located. The proposed zoning, let's see, the city council, city council, you're receiving the recommendation from the Planning Commission, who held their public hearing with respect to this property. As we review zone changes in our general plan, we have some guidelines that we reference in with respect to whether or not the proposed rezone is in compliance with the general plan. These are guidelines, and so they don't necessarily all fit or line up, but they do help us to identify whether or not those are going to be in line with our general plan. So first of all, if you look at our general plan map, which we don't have in front of you, we actually have parks and other city facilities identified on our general plan map. And this park is identified as a park on our general plan. In addition to that, there are some general guidelines that we have addressed with respect to the relationship to adjoining properties, to reflecting the use of the property and how does it fit with and line up with the proposed zoning, which it does. where possible, if there are issues with streets and street frontages and what have you, those have been also addressed. And we also have a guideline that talks about not having zone lines go across properties, which this does not. So as part of the consideration on behalf of the Planning Commission, and similar to what you're reviewing, the questions are, is the proposal consistent with the general plan? Does the proposal meet the North Ogden zoning ordinance standards? And how does the proposal relate to the zoning and land use policy guidelines? So after the public hearing, the Planning Commission deliberated and unanimously on a 7-0 vote are recommending to the City Council to rezone this property from R110 to Civic Zone C. And the Planning Commission, as part of their findings, found that the application is consistent with the general plan. And I guess one last comment, and that is one of the things that I enjoy about working here in North Ogden is the positive relationship we have with other departments. So our Parks and Recreation Department, they were consulted throughout this, the development of this site plan as well, and they have approved it as well. So with that, Mayor, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rob. I think the questions I heard most is the fact that there's no changes here. This is just outlining what we have in a plan and then moving it to the proper zone. There's no changes proposed in the map, the plat map. So just want to reconfirm that.
That's correct.
Okay, well, thank you, Rob. Good presentation. Are there any questions for Rob from the council this evening?
Hi, just a quick question. So are we planning to do these just kind of one at a time like this? Is they're surveyed and this is our first one? So this is like, yay, first one. And then we're gonna have, do we have the other ones scheduled?
What the Planning Commission actually had a discussion about this, and I think they would like to see us batch them so that we wouldn't just do them one at a time. And so we'll be looking at doing that so that similar properties we would put together, maybe geographically. I'm not sure how it's going to all come together, but you'll be seeing those come forward here in the next while.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, Rob.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Council Member Ekstrom. Are there any other questions? Okay, if there's not, I would be looking for a motion to approve ordinance number 2020-26, which would be to approve the rezoning of the mentioned property from R110 to Civic C zone. Do we have a motion? Do we have a motion?
Mayor, I'll move that we approve ordinance 2020-26, rezoning Mountain View Park, the property discussed, from R110 to the Civic Zone.
Thank you, Council Member Swanson. Do we have a second?
Oh,
Second.
Thank you, Council Member Stoker. We have a motion and we have a second. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll now go to a roll call vote. Council Member Barker,
Yes.
Council Member Swanson,
Yes.
Council Member Ekstrom,
yes.
Council Member Stoker.
Yes.
Thank you very much. On our agenda item next is the item number 7. And it's basically will be presented by Annette Spenlove, and it's a discussion and or action to consider an ordinance for our 2021 meeting schedule. Annette?
Mayor and Council, before you is an ordinance that sets the dates and times for the different kinds of meetings the city will have in the next year. Doesn't mean you won't add some, and some might go away, but for right now, we had to add, according to the law, what we have currently. And so this ordinance is created with all those in mind. and the dates and times of each of those committee meetings or city council meetings or planning commission meetings. And there is also a public notice that was in your packet that showed those dates. The council normally and committees normally, if it falls on election day or on a holiday, those meetings will be canceled. Doesn't mean that you can't have special meetings or emergency meetings. That isn't part of this because those come up from time to time. So tonight, before you right now, is just setting the times and dates for the 2021 calendar year, establishing these dates and times.
Okay, council, have you had a chance to look at those dates? Do you have any discussion, any questions of Annette? Okay, seeing none, we would look for a motion to approve ordinance number 2020-27. Do we have a motion?
Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Stoker.
make a motion that we approve the 2021 meeting schedule as been outlined, and that's 2020-27.
Yes, thank you very much. Do we have a second to Councilmember Stoker's motion?
I'll second.
I have a second by Councilmember Ekstrom. So a motion and a second. Are there any further discussions? If not, we will go to a roll call vote since this is an ordinance. Councilmember Stoker,
Yes.
Councilmember Swanson,
Yes.
Councilmember Barker,
Yes.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Yes.
Looks like that ordinance passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll now go on to item number 8 on our agenda. We'll seek some reports from our council members on their responsibilities. We'll start with Councilmember Barker on building and planning.
As we discussed in our last meeting, our building department's going really busy. I did get an update from Joey in October. We issued 34 building permits, 24 to single family homes and 5 plex units. So 34 buildings. That doesn't include all the additions, remodels, sheds, garages, all that other. I think we were over 60, close to 70 permits total for the month of October. And then planning, I'm working a little bit with Rob on sensitive land ordinance update for up on the hillside. I'm working with the fire marshal from Weber on fire protection for that area. I have a meeting with him tomorrow. It went to planning commission last week. So when we get ready to annex that new land, it looks like we'll have some ordinance ready for him.
Is that dealing with the flag lots?
Yep. Large flag lots and private lanes, and maybe not private lanes with private driveways, and yep. And Weber Fire deals with that a lot up in the Upper Valley. And so I figured instead of me trying to figure it all out myself, I'm just going to steal what they have, and then the contractors will be used to it.
Good move, Councilmember Barker. Anything else you'd like to report on that's going on in planning and building?
Nope, that's it for now.
All right, thank you very much. Councilmember Swanson, in regards to the finance of our city.
Evan gave us a great report, as he always does. And right now, finances are looking quite nice. We're very fortunate as a city to be in a position to quickly restore the rainy day funds that we used and get that back up. Excuse me. We did have our first audit committee meeting yesterday. That went well with Randy Wynn and with Thane Schaefer from the community, and then Councilmember Ekstrom and Mayor Berube and myself and John Call. A couple of the items that committee will be looking at in the future. One is our motor pool accounting and how we handle that. Not that there's anything wrong with the way we're doing it now. We're just going to take a look and see if it is the best way for the city. And we'll also be looking at that reinstatement priority list and making sure that that is properly prioritized and ready to roll when the opportunity comes. Hopefully our trends continue. We are doing much better than some of our surrounding communities as far as our tax revenue goes. We're a good double of what Pleasant View and Harrisville are so far. We're doing really, really well. Can't explain it, but we're doing very well.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Swanson. And I appreciated the statistics you quoted yesterday about our city versus some of the surrounding cities. We are very fortunate, and our hope is that will continue on. We have some good projects coming up, and it'd be nice to have that revenue. So thank you very much. Any questions of Councilmember Barker or Councilmember Swanson on their assignments or suggestions? All right. We will open up for public comments. John, do we have any public with us tonight?
We do have some still holding on. It's been a long meeting. I think we've almost hit 55 minutes. But
Council member Swanson told me the only meeting that's better than a short meeting is no meeting. So
That's what my dad used to say, only with a little more colorful language.
I can't imagine Emron's using colorful language. All right, John, any public comments?
Nope, we're good.
All right. We'll move on to item number 10, which is any comments from the council. We'll start there. Any comments from citizens that we need to address that you've had?
Mayor,
Councilwoman Stoker, are you speaking to us? You're muted.
I was muted, sorry. Yes, I do have. With all the windstorms that we've had lately and the big trees that have blown over, a resident has come to me and asked me about the city's insurance policy or a homeowner's. If the neighbor's tree falls on their property and does damage, who's responsible for that?
And
they were
the city, but let's ask our city attorney to answer that question.
So it would typically be between neighbors. If a neighbor is in a backyard and it falls across into the other neighbor's backyard, they are responsible for their tree, which is on their property, which has now relocated itself to another's property. I am not aware, though, if there are nuances for acts of God. If a tornado came through, who would be liable? So I haven't dealt with that type of an insurance claim. I do know that the Government Immunity Act would provide a lot of protection for the city for a tree that blew over. The one exception might be if the city was aware that the tree was in rough shape and fell over, then we might have some liability, but luckily the insurance adjusters are the ones who would sort that out.
I should have made it clear that it was between, like you said, between the property owner and the neighbor. And the person who was asking me about it was under the impression that he would have to take care of his neighbor's tree and not the other way around. But I said to him, that's probably something you'd take up with your insurance companies.
Anything else, Council Member Stoker?
Nope, except it was nice to see a police officer sitting on the road this morning to try and catch the speeder who likes to come through my yard and continue on down the road. So good job, guys. Uh-huh.
Oh.
Last week. It's always exciting around this corner.
Yeah, I don't know if many of you saw the accident at 1050 and 2600 again this evening. I immediately received which some of you probably also received, regarding that intersection and the number of accidents that's occurring there. And what the city can do. Suggestion was a roundabout. But anyway, looked like it was, I don't think anybody was significantly hurt, but there was some damage to the vehicles, pretty significant. So, okay, any other comments from council members?
Well, just a couple of things that, that we were discussing before is just so far we have 100% positive support for Utopia. I guess that we did. Somebody commented, I guess, on the paper, but we don't know where they're from, that they didn't like it. But that seems to be like a general trend toward it. And I just barely came through that intersection today, that 1050 and 2600, which I frequent often. And it is very treacherous. I feel like, well, I have a couple of them actually trying to turn left onto Fruitland Drive from 2100. I feel like I'm always taking my life in my hands there, and 1050 and 2600. Part of it is that you do have to kind of sneak out to see, and I'm going straight across. But a lot of people turning left, traveling east, turning left onto 1050, really like to cut that corner, right? So it's like if you come all the way to the stop sign and someone is turning left, you're like, whoa, please don't hit me. So I really would like to see some research done on doing something about that intersection too.
Okay. John, if you'd make note of that. One alternative is kind of have a crossing guard down there and see if Councilman Swanson would go down there and direct traffic. But
give me a bright green vest and Cheryl's boots. I'm ready to go.
There you go.
Right. You're on.
I may step off the curb with you.
All right.
We do need to maybe take a look at that, John, and see if there's something we can do to increase safety there.
Okay.
Well, thanks, Council Member Ekstrom. Anything else? All right, thank you. Anything from the rest of the council members? I would just remind, and I've seen some comments about it, the Public Works Group has worked hard to get the credit on utility bills this month, $36 credit, which is very timely as people probably just paid their property taxes. And so thanks to the Public Works Group for that. Still much work to be done, but I think, I hope our citizens know that we are cognizant of the situation many of them are in and trying to do our best to not burden them with things during these difficult times. But so hopefully you saw that on your utility bills, and great work there. Staff, do you have any comments before we adjourn this evening?
I do have 3 quick things. One is just a reminder of the holiday employee lunches. As you know, we're separating and staying in our work groups, but we have asked council members to join in for their work group, and others if they can. But anyways, that's happening next week. So remember your days. I have connected with that owner of the duplex on Washington, Councilwoman Stoker.
Okay, I was wondering about that. Thank you.
And he actually has said they have expressed some interest in rebuilding, which he knows there would be some extensive work needed. But he is working with, or the building department and him will work together on whether or not it's safe or not to do that. So he's aware of our concerns, and we are moving forward on that. And then I did also follow up the question that came up last week about the bond discussion, and would a bond with Utopia conflict with the city's other financing options? And the answer was, if it's the same pot of money that's paying the debt or obligating the debt, then yes, but if not, then no. So what that means is, if the city did a go bond for a public safety building, which is the one that the residents would vote on, that comes out of property tax, and the Utopia funding is typically coming out of sales or franchise taxes. So because they're 2 different revenue sources, they wouldn't impact each other as far as ratings and things. obviously, as a staff member, not making a recommendation on what the council ultimately does, just giving you the answers as we receive them. So that's it, Mayor.
Thank you. Just one other reminder, and I appreciate Councilmember Barker calling me today to remind me. I apparently don't know how to quite operate my iPhone after 20 years, put it on the right date, but just a reminder, I had the chance to go down to the fire station this afternoon and thank the first responders there. Also scheduled on December 11th and the 15th at 11 o'clock for those who would like to come down and participate in expressing gratitude to our firefighters and EMS personnel for the good work they're doing. So I apologize for not getting the day's date to you. I messed up on that and I apologize, but the other two dates, 11th and the 15th, and you know, it's good to see the passion of our city employees and the commitment they have to our city. So it was probably more rewarding for me to go down and see their commitment and passion than for me to offer thanks. But I think it's important that we take that opportunity to do that. So just wanted to give you those dates in case you're interested. And it's down at the main station there on 2550. So, and they were very appreciative today, just to make mention of the citizens who offer support when they see them and they're out, and talk to them and offer them, you know, donuts, drinks, and those type of things. They're very appreciative of the support of our citizens. So, okay, with that, I'm assuming John hasn't changed the rules where we have to have a motion for adjournment. So with that, we'll look for a motion to adjourn our meeting this evening.
One
Motion
quick
to
question.
adjourn.
I would totally second that, but I was just putting it in my iPhone to have the first responders thanks date. Is there a time for that, or is it just kind
11
of all?
o'clock. They're there kind of on shift change at 11. They're there for about an hour and a half, but I think you suggested 11 o'clock is the start time, Councilmember Barker.
Thank you. Sounds good.
Yeah, we're pulling both stations down at 11 o'clock, so they'll be here.
Yep. All right. Well, we didn't have a fist fight to adjourn, but we did have a motion and a second. Does anyone object to adjourning this meeting this evening?
Not at all.
Perfect. We will see you all hopefully at the departmental luncheons, and we will have one more meeting before the Christmas holidays. So thank you for all you do and have a great evening.
You too.
Thank
Bye-bye
you.
now.
Good night, everybody.